Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? Today you're taking a look at the world of forensic science.
What, Cola?
We got a ton of sources for this one.
We do.
Everything from, textbooks
Right.
to government reports and even pop culture stuff.
It's going to be interesting.
Oh yeah, so we'll be able to give you a really good overview of
Yeah.
how forensic science is used to solve mysteries.
Yeah, and how it's portrayed.
Exactly. And you might be surprised to learn that forensic science isn't just about crime scenes.
Not at all. It's used in so many other areas, too.
Like what?
Like authenticating historical artifacts.
Oh, wow.
Or settling civil disputes.
So it really is about, using science to,
Find the truth.
find the truth in any legal matter.
Pretty much.
That's awesome. I've been looking through the research materials.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, there is some seriously cool stuff in here.
Like what?
Like real-world examples of how forensic scientists cracked cases using, everything.
Everything.
From bugs to digital footprints.
It's fascinating.
It is.
Yep.
And we've even got some stuff about techniques that were once considered, cutting edge,
Yeah.
but were later debunked.
It happens.
Yeah, which is kind of a reminder that science is always evolving.
Always.
And what we think is true today, might not be true tomorrow.
It's true.
One example that I saw is the use of comparative bullet lead analysis.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
For decades, that was like a go-to method, right?
It was.
The idea was that you could link a bullet.
From a crime scene.
Yeah, from a
Okay.
crime scene to a specific batch of ammunition
Yeah.
based on its chemical makeup.
Right?
And it was even used in the JFK assassination investigation.
High stakes.
Yeah, pretty high stakes. So what happened?
Well, the FBI actually stopped using comparative bullet lead analysis
Really?
in the early 2000s.
Wow. So why?
Well, it turns out there were some serious flaws in the science.
Oh.
The National Academy of Sciences actually found that the results of these analyses were often being misinterpreted.
So it wasn't as reliable as everyone thought?
Not really, no.
That's kind of amazing, though, right? That even in a field like forensic science, what we consider to be true can change
It definitely can.
as we learn more.
Yeah, science is all about constantly questioning and testing our assumptions.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's not about being right or wrong. It's about getting closer to the truth.
Exactly.
That's a good point. So, okay, before we get ahead of ourselves,
Okay.
let's start with the basics. What exactly is forensic science?
Forensic science is basically using scientific principles to answer legal questions.
Okay.
So it could be criminal or civil law.
Okay, so it's like taking the tools and methods we use to understand the natural world
Uh-huh.
and applying them to legal matters.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like using the language of science to translate clues into evidence.
I like that. That's a good way to put it.
Thanks. So what kind of evidence are we talking about?
Well, it could be anything from fingerprints
Oh, yeah, classic.
to DNA or even the pattern of blood stains at a crime scene.
Oh, yeah, bloodstain pattern analysis.
That's a big one.
Definitely going on a list of things to talk about.
We'll get there.
But what about the history of all this?
Oh, it's fascinating.
Did people, like in ancient Rome, have their own version of CSI?
Maybe not exactly like CSI, but the roots of forensic science go way back.
Okay, how far back?
Well, one of the earliest known texts on the subject is from 13th century China.
Oh,
It's called Washing Away of Wrongs.
okay. Washing away of wrongs.
And it was written by a judge named Song Xia.
Wait, a judge was writing about forensic science back then?
He was?
That's so cool. What kind of stuff did they do back then?
Well, Song Xi's book is this really interesting mix of practical advice and some surprisingly insightful observations.
Like what?
Like he details methods for examining corpses to determine cause of death
Oh, wow.
and techniques for distinguishing between drowning and strangulation.
Wow. So they were already thinking about those things back then.
They were.
So I'm guessing they didn't have fancy microscopes or DNA analysis back in the 13th century?
Well, not quite.
So how did they do it?
Well, a lot of Song Xi's methods relied on careful observation and logical deduction.
Makes sense.
For example, there's this story about a murder where the suspected weapon was a sickle,
Okay, it's sickle.
and to figure out which sickle was used, Song Xi had all the suspects bring their sickles to one location,
Okay.
and then he just watched to see which one attracted the most flies.
Wait, what? The flies.
The flies.
Okay, I have so many questions.
I bet you do. It's pretty clever though, right?
It is actually, I guess the flies would be drawn to the scent of blood.
Exactly.
on the murder weapon.
Exactly.
That's a pretty brilliant way to use what they had available at the time.
It is, and it actually aligns with one of the core principles of modern forensic science,
Which is,
a low-cards exchange principle.
oh yeah, that every contact leaves a trace.
Exactly. Even without knowing the science behind it, Song Sai was putting low-cards exchange principle into action centuries earlier.
That's amazing. So from flies on sickles to, whatever else they were doing back then. It seems like forensic science has always been about pushing the boundaries of what we can observe and understand.
It has. And the development of forensic science didn't happen overnight.
Right. It was a gradual evolution.
Exactly. By the 16th century, for example, European surgeons started studying causes of death more systematically,
Right.
which helped pave the way for modern pathology.
So from flies to corpses, it's all connected.
It is all connected.
That's awesome. So as methods became more sophisticated,
Yeah,
I'm guessing the people who were pioneering them also became more well-known.
they did. People like Hans Gross, for example.
Who's Hans Groth?
He's often called the father of criminalistics.
Wow, father of criminalistics. That's a pretty big title.
It is. He's a pretty important figure in the history of forensic science.
So what did he do?
Well, in the late 19th century, Gross created the Institute of Criminalistics,
Okay.
which became a model for other similar institutions around the world.
Wow.
He was a huge advocate for using scientific methods to collect and analyze evidence.
So he was really trying to professionalize the field.
He was.
That's amazing. Were there other big names in early forensic science?
Oh, yeah. Besides Locard, who we've already mentioned, there's Alphonse Bertillon.
Wait, isn't he the guy who came up with that system of measuring body parts to identify criminals?
He is. His anthropometry system was a major step forward in criminal identification.
Even though it's not really used anymore, right?
Right. It was eventually replaced by fingerprinting.
But it's still pretty cool that they were already thinking about those things back then.
It is. It shows how far we've come.
And how some of these early techniques, even if they're not used anymore, really helped shape the field.
They did.
So forensic science continued to evolve, and it branched out into all these specialized disciplines,
It did.
like bloodstain pattern analysis and forensic DNA analysis and forensic entomology.
You got it.
Okay, back to the bugs. You're going to have to explain that one to me.
I will. I will.
Okay, so forensic entomology.
You ready for this?
Hit me with it.
All right, so imagine this. You arrive at a crime scene and there's a body.
Okay.
Now imagine being able to tell just by studying the insects on that body
Hold on.
when the person died.
Wow.
Whether the body was moved
Really?
or even if they were exposed to certain drugs or poisons.
That's insane. How is that even possible?
That's where forensic entomology comes in.
Okay.
These specialists study the types of insects present their life cycles, even the contents of their stomachs.
You're kidding.
Nope.
To get clues about the crime.
It's pretty amazing.
It really is. So it's like these bugs are like tiny little witnesses
I like that.
carrying secrets we can unlock with the right knowledge.
You got it.
That's so cool. All right,
Yeah,
so we've
okay.
talked about bloodstains, bugs, but now
Yeah.
let's talk about DNA analysis.
Right.
That's kind of the gold standard in forensic science, right?
It's definitely revolutionized the field.
Yeah.
Before DNA analysis, investigators had to rely on things like eyewitness accounts,
Oh, yeah.
fingerprints, and other types of evidence that could be unreliable or open to interpretation.
But DNA is unique to each individual.
Right.
So it provides that like irrefutable link.
In most cases, yes.
And the technology has gotten so advanced
It has.
that you can get a DNA profile from like the tiniest samples,
Yeah.
like a single hair,
A drop of saliva.
or even skin cells.
Exactly.
That's crazy. So even if a criminal tries to be super careful,
Mm-hmm.
they're probably leaving DNA evidence behind without even realizing it.
It happens all the time. It's low-cards exchange principle in action.
Yep, you can't commit a crime without leaving a trace.
And DNA is often that invisible, irrefutable trace.
I'm sure that's been a game changer for solving cold cases.
Absolutely. DNA testing has helped solve countless cold cases.
That had gone unsolved for years.
Years, sometimes even decades.
Wow. And it's not just about identifying criminals, right?
Right.
DNA analysis can also be used to clear innocent people.
It's true. It's been used to exonerate a lot of wrongly convicted individuals.
That's so important.
Yeah.
It's like science is providing a voice for those who are wrongly accused.
It is.
Or for victims whose cases went cold.
I like that.
And what about using DNA analysis to identify victims,
Oh, yeah. That's another important application.
like in mass disasters or historical events?
Exact.
I remember hearing about how DNA was used to identify victims of the 9/11 attacks.
Yeah, that was a huge undertaking.
It must have been.
And in other cases, DNA analysis has been used to identify soldiers missing in action
Wow.
or to uncover the truth about historical mysteries.
That's really incredible. It's amazing how this one scientific tool has had such a profound impact
It really has.
on so many different areas of life.
Yeah.
So DNA analysis is obviously a huge deal.
It is.
But you mentioned earlier that it wasn't the only revolutionary technique in forensic science.
Right.
What else is there?
Well, let's talk about digital forensics.
Okay, digital forensics.
It's one of the fastest growing areas in the field.
I can see why our lives are so intertwined with technology these days.
They are.
And that leaves a digital trail.
It does.
That can be really valuable in investigations.
Extremely valuable.
So we're talking about emails,
Emails,
text messages, social media posts, all of that stuff.
all of that and more.
It's all potential evidence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything you do, online browsing history, online purchases, even files you think you've deleted,
Oh, no.
it can all be recovered.
That's both amazing and terrifying.
It is. It's like those crime shows where they say enhance and magically pull up all this information.
Right.
But in real life, it's obviously much more complicated than that.
I'm sure it is. So what does digital forensics actually involve?
Well, specialists have to know how to recover data from all sorts of devices, computers, smartphones, gaming consoles even.
Wow, so they're like tech detectives.
Yeah, you could say that.
That's pretty cool. And their work isn't just about solving crimes, is it?
No, it's also important for things like preventing terrorism,
Oh, wow.
combating cybercrime, and protecting national security.
So it's a really important field. Okay, so we've gone from flies on sickles to decoding bloodstains to tracking digital footprints.
We have?
What other forensic magic tricks are out there?
Well, we can't forget about the specialists who work with the remains of the dead.
Okay, you're talking about forensic anthropologists.
I am.
This is the one I've been waiting for.
All right, so imagine you find some skeletal remains.
Okay.
Maybe at a crime scene, maybe at an archaeological dig.
Okay.
Now imagine being able to tell just from those bones
Wait, hold on.
the person's age, sex, ancestry.
You can tell all that from just bones.
You can, and that's not all.
There's more.
Oh, yeah. Forensic anthropologists can also identify signs of trauma disease or malnutrition.
Wow.
And they can often reconstruct facial features from skull bones.
That's incredible. So it's like
Yeah.
putting together a puzzle, but with bones.
Exactly.
And it's not just about identifying the dead, right?
Right.
What else do they do?
Well, forensic anthropologists can help determine the cause of death,
Okay.
whether it was natural, accidental, or homicide.
So their work is really important for understanding the circumstances surrounding a death.
It is. And their work can also be essential in human rights investigations.
How so?
Well, they can help identify victims of war crimes or genocide.
Like they're giving a voice to the voiceless, even when those voices have been silenced for centuries.
A very powerful way to put it.
So we've got bloodstain pattern analysis, DNA analysis, forensic entomology, digital forensics, and forensic anthropology.
You've covered a lot.
It's like a whole team of forensic superheroes, each with their own unique set of skills.
Exactly. Each of these specialties plays a crucial role in the pursuit of justice.
This is incredible. I knew forensic science was cool, but I had no idea just how vast and fascinating it really is.
It's a pretty amazing field. And the amazing thing is we're constantly learning more,
Right.
developing new techniques, and pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Forensic science is a constantly evolving field,
It is.
and it just keeps getting more interesting. Okay, but now I have a confession to make. I'm kind of a crime show junkie.
A lot of people are.
But after learning all of this, I'm starting to wonder,
Yeah.
how much of what we see on TV is actually accurate?
That's a great question. There's actually a phenomenon called the CSI effect.
The CSI effect.
It describes how these crime shows have shaped public perception of forensic science,
Hey, Ben?
and sometimes in ways that aren't entirely accurate.
So it's not all instant DNA results and fancy computer graphics.
No, it's not.
So tell me, what's the reality?
Well, real-life forensic investigations are much more complex
I bet.
and time-consuming than what you see on TV.
Right. I'm guessing they kind of gloss over the more boring parts,
They do.
like waiting weeks for lab results
Yeah.
or meticulously documenting every single piece of evidence.
That's not very exciting for TV.
No, it's not.
Mhm.
And they probably oversimplify the science sometimes.
They do. They often exaggerate the capabilities of certain techniques.
So no zooming in on a blurry security camera image and magically revealing the suspect's face.
No, not quite.
But that doesn't mean that forensic science isn't incredibly powerful.
No, it definitely
It's
is.
just important to understand its
All
limitations
right.
and to appreciate the real-world complexities of the work.
Exactly.
I'm definitely getting a whole new appreciation for what these forensic scientists do.
Good.
It's not just about the technology.
No.
It's about meticulous observation, scientific rigor, and a relentless pursuit of the truth.
Well said.
And it's a field that's constantly evolving, right?
It is. With new challenges emerging all the time.
Like what kind of challenges are forensic scientists facing these days?
Well, one big challenge is the issue of evidence contamination.
Contamination.
We talked about how sensitive DNA analysis is.
Yeah, incredibly sensitive.
Even the tiniest amount of foreign DNA can contaminate a sample
Oh.
and lead to inaccurate results.
So that's why those crime scene investigators are always wearing those white suits and booties.
Exactly. They're trying to minimize the risk of leaving their own DNA at the scene.
That makes sense. But contamination can still happen, right?
It can, even with the best precautions.
Oh.
Well, a first responder might accidentally touch something, or evidence might be improperly handled or stored.
Yikes. That's scary to think about. One tiny mistake could potentially throw off an entire investigation.
It could. That's why researchers are constantly working to develop new methods for detecting and mitigating contamination.
So it's a constant battle to stay ahead of the curve.
It is, but that's what makes forensic science so dynamic and challenging.
That's a good point. So we've talked about the challenges, but what about the opportunities?
Oh, there are tons of opportunities.
What's on the horizon for forensic science?
Well, one area that's really exciting is nanotechnology.
Nanotechnology.
Imagine being able to analyze evidence at the molecular level,
Wow.
detecting trace amounts of explosives, drugs,
Right.
or even specific proteins found in blood or saliva.
That's amazing. So we could get information from samples that were previously too small or too degraded to test.
Exactly.
That's incredible. What else?
Another area that's generating a lot of buzz is virtual reality.
VR. For forensics.
Yeah, imagine recreating entire crime scenes in VR.
Well, hold on. So instead of just looking at photos or diagrams,
Yeah.
investigators could actually experience the crime scene.
They could walk through the scene, examine evidence from all angles,
Really?
and potentially even replay events based on forensic data.
That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
I know, right?
But it would be a game changer for training purposes.
Absolutely. And for presenting evidence in court.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
But like with any new technology,
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing there are some ethical considerations.
There always are.
Like, how do we ensure the accuracy and objectivity of these VR reconstructions?
That's a big one.
And how do we prevent them from being manipulated or used to unfairly influence a jury?
Those are all important questions that we need to address.
It's not just about having these cool new tools.
Right.
It's about using them responsibly and thoughtfully.
Exactly.
And that makes sense. And speaking of responsibility,
Yeah.
I think it's important to remember the human element in all of this.
I agree.
We've talked a lot about the science and the technology.
I have.
But behind all of that are dedicated people who are using their skills and expertise to make a difference.
They are the unsung heroes of forensic science.
They're the ones who are working tirelessly,
Mm-hmm.
often under difficult conditions,
To piece together the truth.
and sometimes even to bring justice to those who've been wronged.
It's a powerful thing.
So it's not just about data and evidence.
Yeah.
It's about dedication, passion, and the human drive to seek justice.
Well said.
Forensic science is ultimately about more than just solving crimes.
It is.
It's about upholding the principles of fairness, accountability.
In the rule of law.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
Yeah.
We've covered so much ground.
From the history of forensic science
Uh-huh.
to the cutting-edge technologies that are shaping its future.
And it's clear that this field is constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It is.
And as our world keeps changing, I imagine forensic science will continue to evolve right alongside it. So what does the future hold for forensic science?
That's a great question. It's hard to say for sure.
Right.
But I think it's safe to say that it will continue to play a vital role in our pursuit of justice, truth, and a safer world.
Well said.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. We've been talking about all these advancements in forensic science.
Yeah.
And it's got me thinking about what the future holds.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
what's next? Are we going to have flying cars that double as crime scene investigators?
Maybe not flying cars, but the possibilities really are pretty amazing.
I bet. So what's on the horizon? What's got you excited?
Well, we touched on AI a bit earlier.
Yeah.
But its potential in forensic science is huge. Like, imagine a world
Okay.
where AI isn't just analyzing data, you know?
Uh-huh.
But it's actively assisting investigators right there at the crime scene.
Whoa, hold on. So like processing information in real time to guide their next steps?
Exactly. Like having a super smart computer whispering in your ear saying, hey, check the fingerprints on that doorknob, but also don't forget to do a thermal imaging scan for hidden compartments.
That's kind of wild. I mean, it sounds incredibly helpful,
Oh, it would be.
but also a little unsettling.
Yeah, I get that.
Like, what about human intuition and experience?
Huh.
Wouldn't we risk becoming too reliant on AI?
It's a valid concern for sure. And that's why the future of forensic science isn't just about developing cool new technologies.
Right.
It's about figuring out how to integrate those technologies in a way that enhances human expertise,
Right.
not replaces it.
So it's all about finding that balance
Exactly.
between the power of technology
Yes,
and the wisdom of human judgment.
you got it. And it's about asking ourselves those tough ethical questions, like
Right.
what happens when AI makes a mistake? Who's accountable then? And how do we make sure that AI is being used fairly and without bias?
Those are really important questions.
They are. It's like we're writing the rules of a new game as we go along.
And the stakes are pretty high.
Incredibly high.
Yeah.
We're talking about people's lives, their freedom, their reputations.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So we need to be really careful about how we use this technology
we do. We need to have these conversations now, anticipate the challenges, and create safeguards.
to make sure that this technology is used responsibly.
And ethically.
Okay, so AI is definitely a game changer. What other futuristic forensic tech is out there?
Well, let's talk about predictive policing.
Predictive policing.
It's a bit of a controversial topic.
How so?
Well, the idea is to use algorithms to predict where and when crimes are going to happen.
Wait, hold on. So you're saying we can actually predict crime?
That's the goal.
Yeah.
The algorithms would analyze tons of data.
Like what kind of data?
Past offenses, weather patterns, social media trends, all sorts of things.
And then use that to identify areas where crime is more likely to occur.
Exactly.
I mean, that sounds incredibly useful,
It could be.
but also potentially problematic.
How so?
Well, wouldn't that risk targeting certain communities unfairly?
That's the big ethical dilemma with predictive policing. It has the potential to make communities safer by allocating resources more effectively,
Right.
but it could also reinforce existing biases and perpetuate inequalities.
So it's not just about having the data, it's about understanding the context
Exactly.
and recognizing the potential for bias.
And using the information responsibly.
It seems like every advancement in forensic science comes with ethical considerations.
It does. It's a constant balancing act.
Okay, so predictive policing is definitely something to keep an eye on. What else is on the horizon?
Well, let's go back to virtual reality for a second.
Okay, VR.
It has huge potential, not just for crime scene reconstruction, but also for training forensic scientists.
Oh, that's a good point. Instead of just reading textbooks or watching videos,
Yeah.
aspiring forensic specialists could actually experience crime scenes.
In a virtual environment.
That would be a game changer.
They could practice their observation skills, learn how to collect evidence, even make mistakes in a safe environment.
Before they ever set foot in a real crime scene.
Exactly. And VR could also be used to train law enforcement officers, judges, and even jurors.
Wow.
Give them a more immersive understanding of forensic science.
It would really help to bridge the gap between the science and the people who need to understand it.
Exactly.
Okay,
Last question.
hit me with it.
What about DNA analysis? We talked about how revolutionary it's been,
Yeah,
but what might the future hold?
that's a good question.
Imagine being able to extract DNA from even more degraded samples,
Yep.
like a fingerprint smudge on a window or a tiny flake of skin.
That was left behind years ago.
Exactly.
We could solve cold cases that seemed impossible before.
We could, but it also raises those ethical questions about privacy
Right, because we're talking about genetic information.
and the potential for misuse. How do we balance the need to solve crimes with the right to privacy?
It's a tough question.
It is. The future of forensic science isn't just about scientific progress
It's also about having those tough conversations about making ethical choices.
and ensuring that these powerful tools are used for good.
Wow, this has been an incredible journey.
It has.
We've gone from ancient Chinese judges using flies to solve murders
I know, right?
to the mind-blowing potential of AI and virtual reality.
And everything in between.
Forensic science is an amazing field,
It is.
and it's only getting more fascinating. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that forensic science isn't just about solving crimes.
It's about something bigger.
It's about seeking the truth, using science to understand the world around us, and ensuring that justice is served.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And it's full of passionate, dedicated people
Absolutely.
who are committed to making a difference. To all those forensic superheroes out there,
We salute you.
we salute you. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of forensic science.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.
And remember, every contact leaves a trace.